I should have known trouble was coming when Marcus pulled up in that beat-up Ford, dust trailing behind him like a bad omen. 47 years I'd worked this land, and I could smell change in the wind better than most folks could smell rain. But pride has a way of making a man blind to what's right in front of him. "You the foreman?" he asked, stepping out with that easy confidence city folks wear like armor. Clean boots, soft hands, the kind of smile that said he'd never missed a meal. Everything about him rubbed me wrong. "Tom Brennan," I said, not offering my hand. "And you're the new hire my boss mentioned." "Marcus Chen, looking forward to working with you." The way he said it, like we were equals, like he hadn't just shown up to take work from men who'd been here since before he was born. I'd seen his type before. College boys playing farmer for a season, thinking they could learn in a month what took me decades to master. "Equipment shed's over there," I pointed with my chin. "You'll start with the south field. Fence repair." I watched him walk away, noting how he favored his left leg slightly, how his eyes took in everything like he was cataloging it. Something about him didn't sit right, but I couldn't put my finger on what. The sky was already darkening to the west, unusual for this time of year. The air felt heavy, electric. My grandfather used to say the earth talks to those who listen. Right then, it was screaming. I turned back to my work, dismissing the stranger. By evening, I'd regret that decision more than anything I'd ever done in my life. By noon, the storm clouds had built into towering monuments of gray and black, and Marcus was struggling. I could see him from the main barn, wrestling with fence wire that should have been child's play for any real farmhand. The smart thing would have been to help him, show him the ropes. Instead, I found reasons to stay busy elsewhere. "Tom," his voice carried across the field. "Could use some guidance over here." I pretended not to hear, focusing on the tractor maintenance that could have waited another day. Let him figure it out himself. That's how I learned, trial by fire, no hand-holding. When he called again, I finally looked up, irritation flaring in my chest. He was standing by the fence line, holding a roll of wire like it might bite him. The wind was picking up, bending the wheat in waves that looked almost like water. "You deaf, or just ignoring me?" he called, closer now. "Figure it out," I shouted back. "That's what you're paid for." Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. For a second, I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered all the good men who'd lost work to outsiders, all the farms sold to developers, all the ways the world kept changing for the worse. He nodded slowly, like he understood more than just my words. Fair enough. The first rumble of thunder rolled across the sky, long and low. The horses in the far pasture were getting restless, bunching together near the barn. Animals always know first. I should have paid attention to the signs, should have swallowed my pride and helped him secure that fence, should have done a lot of things differently. But hindsight's a luxury you only get after the storm has passed. The weather radio crackled to life just after 2 o'clock, the metallic voice cutting through the barn's dusty air like a knife. Tornado watch issued for Caldwell County. Conditions favorable for severe weather development. Seek shelter immediately if warnings are issued. I'd heard it 1,000 times before. Living in Tornado Alley, you learn to read the sky like a book. But this felt different. The air pressure was dropping fast, making my ears pop. The cattle were lowing nervously, and even the barn cats had disappeared to whatever hiding spots they trusted most. Marcus appeared in the doorway, sweat-stained and breathing hard. "That fence is fighting me every step of the way. Mind if I grab some water?" I gestured toward the cooler without looking up from the engine I was pretending to work on. Truth was, my hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear. I'd weathered plenty of storms. But from something else. Anticipation, maybe. Or dread. "Sky's looking pretty nasty," he said, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. "You think we should head for cover?" "It's just a watch," I replied, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. "We get these all the time." He studied me for a moment, those sharp eyes taking in details I wished he wouldn't notice. You sure about that? Because those clouds look like they mean business. Outside, the wind was building to a howl. The old barn creaked and groaned like a ship in heavy seas. In the distance, I could see the wheat field rippling in ways that made my stomach clench. I've been through worse, I lied. But even as I said it, I knew this storm was different. The very air seemed to vibrate with malevolent energy, and somewhere deep in my bones, I felt the earth itself holding its breath. The siren started wailing at 3:47 p.m. I know because I was staring at my watch, counting the seconds between lightning and thunder, when that bone-chilling sound cut through the air. 3 miles and closing. Fast. Jesus Christ, Marcus breathed, appearing at my shoulder. Is that what I think it is? Through the barn's open door, we could see it now. A massive wall of black clouds stretching across the horizon, rotating slowly like some ancient, hungry god. The bottom was already touching down, a gray-white funnel that looked deceptively thin from this distance. "Root cellar," I said, my voice barely audible over the wind. "Behind the house." We ran. Not the measured jog of men with time to spare, but the desperate sprint of prey fleeing a predator. The wind was howling now, driving debris horizontally across the yard. A piece of corrugated metal sailed past my head, close enough that I felt the air displacement. The house was 100 yards away, might as well have been 100 miles. "There!" Marcus pointed to a concrete structure I'd almost forgotten about, an old storm shelter my grandfather had built during the Dust Bowl. Closer than the house, and probably safer too. We dove for the heavy wooden door just as the tornado's roar became deafening. I fumbled with the rusted latch, my fingers clumsy with adrenaline, while Marcus threw his weight against the door to keep it from being ripped away. The last thing I saw before we tumbled into darkness was the barn. My grandfather's barn, the one I'd helped repair a dozen times, lifting off its foundation like it was made of paper. Then the door slammed shut above us, and the world went black. The silence after the storm was almost worse than the noise. We lay in the darkness, breathing hard, listening to our hearts hammer against our ribs. The air smelled of earth and old concrete, with an undertone of something else, something metallic and strange. "You okay?" Marcus's voice came from somewhere to my left. "Yeah." I fumbled for my phone, its weak light revealing a small concrete chamber maybe 8 feet square. The walls were rough-hewn, clearly hand-built. My grandfather's work. Solid as always. "Hell of a storm," Marcus said, sitting up slowly. "Think it's passed?" I tried the door above us. It didn't budge, not even a little. Something's blocking it. Debris, probably. The phone light swept across the space, revealing details I'd never noticed in my few childhood visits down here. Shelves lined one wall, still holding dusty mason jars and rusted cans. But there was something else, a section of the far wall that looked different. Newer, somehow. "How long you figure we'll be stuck?" Marcus asked. "Could be hours, could be days, depending on what's up there." I tried to keep the worry out of my voice. The tornado had been massive, easily an F4, maybe stronger. The damage could be catastrophic. Marcus was studying the walls, too, his eyes sharp, even in the dim light. "This is interesting construction. Your grandfather built this?" "During the 30s, Depression era. I moved closer to the strange wall section. Though this part looks different." "Different how?" I ran my hand along the concrete, where the rest of the shelter showed the rough texture of hand-mixed cement. This section was smoother, more professional. And there was a seam, barely visible, but definitely there. "Like it was added later," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Marcus found the loose stone by accident, running his hand along the wall while I tried the door again. The small concrete block shifted under his touch, revealing a hollow space behind it. "Tom, you need to see this." I turned the phone light toward him. He'd managed to work the stone completely free, and now he was reaching into the gap behind it. His face was tight with concentration. "There's something in here, feels like..." He pulled out a metal box about the size of a shoebox, wrapped in what looked like oiled cloth. "Jesus, how long has this been here?" My mouth went dry. "I don't know. I mean, I've only been down here a few times and never for long." The box was heavier than it looked, and when Marcus unwrapped it, the metal underneath was tarnished but intact. No lock, just a simple latch that opened with a soft click. Inside, nestled in what had once been velvet lining, were papers. Old papers, yellowed with age and carefully folded, and underneath them, something that made my blood run cold. A small leather journal, its cover cracked but readable. "Property of James Brennan," Marcus read aloud. "That your grandfather?" I nodded, unable to speak. My grandfather had been a quiet man, kept to himself mostly. Never talked much about the past, especially the early days of the farm. I'd always assumed there wasn't much to tell. Marcus was already unfolding the first document, squinting in the phone's weak light. "This looks like... a deed." "No, wait. It's a bill of sale." "For what?" He was quiet for a long moment, reading. When he looked up, his face was pale. "Tom, I think your grandfather bought this land with money that wasn't his." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean? These papers, they're not just about the farm. They're about what happened before your family got here." Marcus handed me the journal with the careful reverence of someone handling a live grenade. The leather was soft with age, the pages brittle but legible. My grandfather's handwriting, unmistakable even after all these years. "March 15th, 1934, I read aloud. "The Chen family came by again today. Mr. Chen brought his boy, maybe 8 years old. Same age as Tommy will be next year. They're desperate. The droughts hit their farm harder than most, and the bank's threatening foreclosure." My voice caught. Chen. I looked at Marcus, seeing my own shock reflected in his face. "Keep reading," he said quietly. "I know what I have to do. The money from the railroad job is just sitting there, and they need it more than I do. But if I give it to them directly, they'll know where it came from. Better to buy their land, let them think it's a fair sale. They can stay on as tenants until things get better." The next entry was dated a week later. "Bought the Chen farm today. 200 acres for $500. Mr. Chen cried when I handed him the money. Said it was more than fair, more than generous. If only he knew the truth. That money was meant for the railroad company, payment for a job I never finished. But some things matter more than honesty." I stopped reading, my hands shaking. "Marcus, what's your last name again?" "Chen," he said softly. "Marcus Chen. My great-grandfather was David Chen. He owned a farm here until the Dust Bowl." The phone light flickered, threatening to die. In the growing darkness, I could hear my own heartbeat, loud as thunder. "This was your family's land," I whispered. "Looks that way." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I kept reading, each entry in my grandfather's journal adding another layer to a story I'd never known existed. June 1934. "The Chen boy is sick. Dust pneumonia, the doctor says. Mr. Chen asked if he could work extra hours to pay for medicine. I told him not to worry about it, that we'd settle up later. How can I take money from a man when I'm living on land that should be his?" Marcus was very still beside me. "What happened to them? To my family?" I flipped through more pages, my grandfather's guilt bleeding through every word. August 1934. "David Chen died today. The dust finally got him. His wife is talking about moving west, taking the boy to California where her sister lives. I offered to let them stay, but she says there's too much sadness here now." September 1934. "They left this morning. Mrs. Chen hugged me goodbye and thanked me for being so kind to them. I wanted to tell her the truth, wanted to give her the deed to this land. But what good would it do now? The boy needs a fresh start, somewhere without all this dust and death. I looked up at Marcus. Your great-grandmother? She took your grandfather to California? Yeah, he grew up there, became a mechanic. Never talked much about the old days. Marcus's voice was hollow. Never knew we had a farm here. The final entries were the hardest to read. My grandfather's plan to find the Chen family, to make things right. But the years passed, life got complicated, and eventually the guilt became just another burden he carried alone. He tried to find you, I said. Your family, I mean. But after the war, people scattered. Records were lost. So he kept the secret. Until now. I need some air, Marcus said, though we both knew there was nowhere to go. The door above us remained stubbornly sealed, and the phone battery was down to 15%. I set the journal aside and tried to process what we'd learned. Everything I'd believed about my family's legacy was built on a lie. Not a malicious one, maybe, but a lie nonetheless. The land I'd worked my entire life, the farm that had shaped me. None of it was rightfully ours. What are you thinking? Marcus asked. I'm thinking I understand why you came here now. It wasn't just for work, was it? He was quiet for a moment. My grandfather died last year. Left me some papers, old documents he'd kept in a safety deposit box. One of them mentioned this place, this farm. I wasn't sure what it meant, but I had to find out. So you took a job here. Seemed like the easiest way to look around without raising suspicions. He laughed bitterly, though I never expected to find anything like this. The weight of generations pressed down on us in that small concrete space. Two families connected by land and loss, and the desperate choices people make when the world falls apart around them. I was a bastard to you today, I said finally. Yeah, you were. I thought you were just another outsider trying to take something that wasn't yours. The irony wasn't lost on me. Turns out I was the outsider all along. Marcus shifted in the darkness. Your grandfather wasn't a thief, Tom. He was trying to help. With stolen money. Money stolen from a railroad company that was probably cheating farmers out of their land anyway. It was a different time. But I could hear the uncertainty in his voice, the same confusion I was feeling. Right and wrong weren't as clear-cut as they'd seemed a few hours ago. Marcus found the second hiding spot while I was trying to conserve phone battery. His fingers had been tracing the wall patterns when he discovered another loose stone, this one near the floor. There's more, he said, his voice tight with anticipation. This cache was smaller, just a single envelope sealed with wax that had somehow survived decades underground. Inside were photographs, old ones, black and white, showing the farm as it had been in the 1930s. But these weren't family photos. They were surveillance pictures, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Pictures of my grandfather meeting with men in suits, exchanging briefcases, conducting business that clearly wasn't farming. Jesus, I breathed. What was he involved in? The last photo showed my grandfather and another man standing beside a railroad car, both of them looking nervous. On the back, someone had written, "Final payment, March 1934, JB in contact." Your grandfather wasn't just a farmer, Marcus said slowly. He was working with the railroad. Maybe as an informant or a go-between. But the journal said he stole the money. Maybe he didn't steal it. Maybe he earned it, and then couldn't live with how. Marcus studied the photos more carefully. These looked like they were taken by someone else, someone who was watching him. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the underground temperature. You think someone was investigating him? Or blackmailing him? The pieces were starting to form a different picture now. Not a simple story of theft and guilt, but something more complex. My grandfather hadn't just taken money. He'd been part of something bigger, something that had made him enough enemies that he'd needed to hide the evidence. The Chen family, I said suddenly. What if helping them wasn't just guilt? What if it was protection? Marcus looked at me sharply. Protection from what? From whoever was in those photos. From whatever my grandfather was really involved in. A grinding noise from above made us both freeze. Something heavy was being moved, scraping against concrete and wood. Then voices, muffled, but definitely human. "Hello?" I called out, pounding on the door. "We're down here." The voices stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the scraping resumed, more urgent now. "Tom, that you down there?" The voice was familiar. Jake Morrison, my neighbor to the east. "Yeah, Marcus Chen's with me. We're okay, but the door's blocked." "Hang tight. We're clearing debris now. Tornado took out half the county." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by anxiety. Soon we'd be out of this hole, back in the real world where the revelations we'd uncovered would have consequences. I looked at Marcus, wondering what he was thinking. "What are you going to do?" I asked quietly. "About the land, I mean." "I don't know." He was gathering up the papers, the photos, the journal. "This is a lot to process. Legally, you might have a claim. If your family never properly sold the land..." "Tom," his voice was firm, "I didn't come here to take your farm away from you. But it was your family's first. And your family's been working it for 90 years. That has to count for something." The scraping above us grew louder. Soon the door would open, and we'd have to face whatever the tornado had left behind. But more than that, we'd have to figure out how to move forward with the knowledge we now carried. "There's something else," Marcus said, holding up one final document I hadn't seen before. "A will. Your grandfather's will, dated 1960. My hands shook as I took it. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was clear enough. In the event that any descendants of the Chen family could be found, they were to receive equal ownership of the farm. "He tried to make it right," I whispered. But the will was never filed, never made official. Above us, the door creaked open, and sunlight streamed down like a blessing. The world above was unrecognizable. Where the barn had stood, there was only a concrete foundation and scattered debris. The house had lost its roof and most of its west wall. Twisted metal and splintered wood lay scattered across what had been neat farm fields just hours before. Jake Morrison helped pull us out of the shelter, his face grim with exhaustion. "You boys are lucky to be alive. That twister was an F5, biggest one we've seen in 20 years. I stood in the wreckage of everything I'd known, clutching my grandfather's journal against my chest. The physical destruction was overwhelming, but it paled next to the emotional devastation of the last few hours. "Anyone else hurt?" Marcus asked, brushing dirt from his clothes. "3 families lost their homes, but no casualties so far. You two were the only ones we couldn't account for." Jake's eyes moved between us, noting the tension. "Everything okay? You both look like you've seen a ghost." In a way, we had. The ghost of a past that refused to stay buried, of choices that echoed across generations. "We're fine," I said, though it was far from true. "Just shaken up." As Jake headed back to coordinate the cleanup efforts, Marcus and I stood alone in the devastation. The silence between us was heavy with unspoken questions. "The will," he said finally. "What do you want to do about it?" I looked around at the destroyed farm, at the land that had shaped my entire life. "I want to do what's right." "And what's that?" "I don't know yet." I met his eyes. "But I think we need to figure it out together." He nodded slowly. "Partners?" "Partners." It wasn't a solution, not yet, but it was a beginning. A chance to build something new from the wreckage of the past. 6 months later, I stood in the same spot where the tornado had changed everything. The new barn was smaller than the old one, but built to modern standards. The house had been completely rebuilt, with a storm shelter that could accommodate 12 people. And for the first time in 90 years, the deed to the farm carried 2 names, Brennan and Chen. Marcus had insisted on a 50-50 split, despite my arguments that his family's claim was stronger. "Your grandfather tried to do right by mine," he'd said. "Now we get to finish what he started." The legal process had been complicated. The old will, while never filed, provided enough evidence of intent to satisfy the courts. More importantly, it had satisfied us. We'd found a way to honor both our grandfathers, the one who'd tried to help and the one who'd needed help. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked, walking up with 2 cups of coffee. The morning was crisp, perfect for the work ahead. "Ready as I'll ever be." We were converting part of the farm to sustainable agriculture, using techniques Marcus had learned in California, combined with traditional methods I'd inherited from my grandfather. It was a new approach for old land, a way of moving forward without forgetting the past. The storm had destroyed everything we'd built, but it had also revealed everything we'd lost. In the end, that revelation had been worth more than any building. "Think your grandfather would approve?" Marcus asked. I thought about the journal, now safely stored in a bank vault, along with all the other documents we'd found. The story it told wasn't simple or clean, but it was human, full of mistakes and guilt and the desperate desire to do better. "I think he'd be proud we found a way to make it work." Both our grandfathers. "Yeah, both of them." The sun was rising over fields that belonged to both of us now, casting long shadows across land that had seen drought and plenty, loss and redemption. We had work to do, crops to plant, a future to build. But first, we had coffee to finish and stories to share. After all, we had 90 years of catching up to do.